Hello and welcome to Movie Film Studios, the only podcast that takes you inside the mind of two film studio executives as we unravel and then re-ravel the best that Hollywood has to offer. I'm Isaac.
And I'm AJ, and today we left the Movie Film Studio Memorial Theatre as we're both on location. However, we still sat down and independently watched the 2017 urban fantasy crime film, Bright. Get your sunnies out, people. It's a hot one.
Yeah, having Netflix in remote locations helps. It doesn't help that Mufasa Woulda Doulda is down again, because it would have been nice to be able to stream on our own service, but I mean, there's only so many times you can watch Tequila Gold.
That's right.
Even with all those alternate endings.
Also, we're in it's a bit of a legal problem because Bright is a Netflix film, and for it to be on our digital distribution platform, we kind of just had one of the lawyers set up in front of a computer and just holding up a camera and recording it live to our platform. So.
Exactly. I mean, technically, it's a Skype recording, and we're just sort of like broadcasting live. The fact that Skype recording happens to be pointing straight at a screen that's playing Bright has nothing to do with us.
It is. We've done the first thing. No one really does this. We're doing pay-per-view viewing on our platform. So you have to wait, and you have to wait until the schedule allows the lawyer to be watching Bright.
The good thing is it is slightly cheaper than subscribing to Netflix, which is what everyone's after. So
yeah, Netflix is like, what, $12 or $13 a month? We're $10 a month.
Exactly. I mean, that's all you have to do. You just have to be slightly cheaper than your competition, and you'll find that edge to the market. So.
Yes, indeed. Okay, but before we get on with our main feature today, I think it's time for Box Office Report. Last week we were in production of the film Truman, Paddles of Destiny, a spiritual sequel to the 1997 pseudo-documentary comedy film The Truman Show. So, Isaac, how are we going on that film?
It is going great. So, part of what we had to do last time was organise the pinball tournament to find our champion, to then sort of start the documentary/mockumentary with our 80s film stars.
Yes.
It turns out that arranging a pinball tournament is actually kind of interesting and almost worth making a documentary about in its own right.
Right.
We had far more participants in it than we thought, and we're doing a round robin, sort of slowly weeding it out. We've actually got a film crew in there, so we may actually accidentally make a legitimate documentary before we make our mockumentary documentary. So
okay. Oh, I have another idea as well. If we're going to be doing that, we've already got a film crew in there. Why don't we expand? You know how Disney owns ESPN and they do sports? I mean, can't live pinball be a sport? Can we not stream that like 24/7 on our platform? As well as do the documentary, as well as do the film.
The sort of like that Twitch esports thing that's going on at the so Mufasa Woulda Doulda has also a live streaming Twitch style service.
Yes,
but instead of like esport video games, it's old style arcade games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we do the same thing. I mean, we needed somewhere to test run the technology of having the cameras inside the pinballs themselves and in the backboards there to get good shots. So why not? That's really good. I think we'll pass it down to Movie Film Studios Workshop.
Yep.
Practical. I think they're going to have to work. Practical and digital are going to have to work hand in hand with this one. So
they're going to have to settle their differences, put aside their antagonism, and work together.
Yeah, interesting. And we're going to have to come up with another mouthful of an acronym to describe it, but we'll see how that goes. We'll have to check in with that next week, see how it pans out.
Okay, brilliant. All right. On to this week in trailers. Now, because we did watch a Netflix film this week, we thought that we'd have a look in the crystal ball of Netflix releases and see what's coming up in the future on that platform.
Netflix seems to have the balls to actually, speaking of balls and crystal balls, the balls to do films that probably wouldn't get widespread releases if they were Hollywood films.
Yeah.
And they seem to be creatively a little bit different and creatively a little bit out there, which is kind of nice to see. Again, you probably have more of your horrible low-budget Adam Sandler films that Netflix does, but, you know, in amongst there, you might actually get a few good films here and there. So what did we watch this week, AJ?
So first cab off the ranks is a film called Game Over Man, which is a I mean, thriller's the wrong word for it, but it
is sort of Die Hard done by stoners.
That's right, yeah.
So if you've ever watched the comedy show Workaholics, it's by the same three guys who do that. I believe there's a fourth guy, Kyle, who directs most of the episodes.
Yes.
But it's if those guys did Die Hard, essentially there's a terrorist who's taken over a celebrity party and imprisoned Shaggy and the three no-hoper waiters who avoided being captured and now trying to do a action adventure rescue to save the day in very much a Die Hard style where they're using guns and shooting people, but obviously in that stoner comedy very inept way that they do.
Yeah, some very Die Hard moments. There's a scene where they sort of string a bit of rope between two buildings, and then they've rigged up this contraption that consists of an ironing board and a kind of weird like harness thing, and they're trying to sort of cross the gap but then end up getting stuck in the middle, and it's all very weird. And it's look, if you like that kind of comedy, then you'll probably like this film. I definitely don't, so I did not like this trailer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually quite a big fan of Workaholics. It was it was original and fresh when it first started. It went downhill a little bit, but I think the three main guys there have distinct personalities and quite charismatic, and I very much appreciate those guys who write and direct and produce their own content. So I'll probably end up watching this, to be honest. I mean, I do have a Netflix subscription, which I use once every couple of months, and it definitely justifies what I spend on it. But if they're going to keep putting out good original content, I'll watch it. So the other film we watched this week was the trailer we watched this week was a Netflix original as well, with Jack Black, called The Polka King.
So it seems to be a sort of based on a true story tale of a poker-based entrepreneur and musician who makes a lot of money being in a very successful poker band, or polka band rather, but ends up squandering a lot of his money away and then realizing that he needs to pay off his investors. And it features Jack Black talking in a sort of pseudo-Russian accent.
It's Polish, I believe.
Polish,
they say he's a Polish immigrant trying to live the American dream and starts up this sort of business, and old people just want to start investing money in the show. And then apparently that's an illegal way. He can't just accept money from people, and either he has to make the investment legitimate, or he has to pay it back, or find some sort of weird money laundering alternative. It's got a very Wes Anderson kind of vibe to it looks sort of very late 60s, early 70s style that you see in Wes Anderson, that sort of weird faux comedy where you're not sure if it's really a comedy or but it's sort of quite serious events.
But enough of that.
Enough of that.
Onto our feature film today.
Onto the feature
Bright.
film, indeed.
So Bright comes to us via Netflix and David Ayer. Now, David Ayer is, of course, the director of such films as End of Watch.
Suicide Squad. End of Watch as well, yeah.
Yes, the very much maligned Suicide Squad.
And writer of Training Day.
Yes.
Now, I think all of those three kind of have ties in a lot of ways to this film. Suicide Squad being a film about Will Smith who can shoot at things really good, which is something that he does quite a lot of in Bright.
Yes.
End of Watch being a buddy cop film about sort of the dark and gritty nature of crime on the streets and the dangers of being police officers, also what this film is about. And Training Day, which is again a buddy cop film with this sort of serious overtone of they've entered a neighborhood and they have to use their wits to survive. Training Day, I should say, is an excellent film. End of Watch I did not enjoy at all, and Suicide Squad is pretty horrible as well. But I quite enjoyed Bright.
Really? Because I didn't. I mean, I did and I didn't, for a lot of different reasons. But I think before we do any of that, before we unravel this film, we do need to do our customary 2-minute recap. Isaac, are you up for it this week?
Which I will do it this week. Now, in the past, we've said 2-minute recap and sometimes gone on 4 or 5 or 12-minute rambles. I really want to keep this as short as possible.
Yep.
This is really just for anyone who hasn't seen the film or hasn't even seen the trailer. A really brief synopsis. If I go over 2 minutes, AJ, you have to cut me off.
Yep.
And for any information that I miss out on, that's too bad, people. If you want to find out, you just have to go watch the film yourself.
Look, I can't imagine that there's people that want to see this film are coming to us first to figure out what the film is about. So if you're interested in watching these films, go and watch them and then come and listen to us.
All right. Okay.
2 minutes and your time starts now.
The film starts, and it's the first thing that we sort of get a sense of is the world and how it is sort of both subtly and drastically different from our own. There's orcs and elves and centaurs and dragons and fairies that sort of exist in a world, but not in a way that differs very much from our own. It's still got your police, it's still got crime and cars and things like that. The city's subtly different. There's like an elven district and an orcish district, but for the most part, they live together. But there's these massive overtones of racial unease between orcs and humans. An orc is Will Smith's partner, and everyone on the police, he's the first ever orc police officer, and everyone on the force hates him. Will Smith's trying to get transferred. All the other cops want him out because he's a liability. So they start off in this position where there's these two partners who hate one another. They get called out to a disturbance where they find a lot of dead bodies, and then there's a girl with a magic wand. And the magic wand is this all-powerful item that everyone is after. So the humans are after, the elves are after, and the orcs are after. We do a survival bit throughout the streets of whatever city they happen to be in, where they have to survive the night while the humans and orcs and elves come after them. There's a series of skirmishes and attacks. The notable enemies are evil elves who are trying to use the wands to resurrect their evil dark overlord, and there's a climactic showdown where they have to fight off against these all-powerful super kung fu elves, and obviously our heroes overcome their differences and become friends at the end, and the day is saved, and that's the film.
The whole point of this film is sort of a very big genre crossover, genre mashup, rather. So you've got the really hardcore fantasy elements with the elves and the orcs, and obviously the whole context of it being set in sort of our own world, or something that looks very much like our own world. So it's set in sort of modern day Los Angeles with the depiction of the sort of higher priced areas of LA, and then also the sort of more ghetto-y and slummy areas of the city as well. A lot of gang warfare and a lot of that kind of stuff, but also species warfare as well. Super interesting as a concept, I have to say. I really liked the idea of it. The sort of grounding story is the story between Will Smith and his orc partner, Jacoby, I think is his name.
Jacoby, played by Joel Edgerton, and a butt ton of prosthetics.
Yes. A lot of no CGI in that regard either, I don't think.
No, I mean, there's little bits and pieces of his nostrils flaring and his ears twitching and things like that. But for the most part, it's pretty much 99% practical effects in terms of the sets and costuming and things like that, as far as you can tell. There's a few scenes where bullets go flying through the air that are done in bad CG, but really only one or two shots, and the rest of it's done in a believable, practical manner, which is quite impressive, and I quite enjoyed.
So I want to talk about the whole buddy cop aspect of this film, which is where part or most of the humor of this film comes from. So there's moments of levity in this film, and they're purely delivered by the interactions between Will Smith and the orc. And they felt very out of place. So this film is really gritty. It really goes for that hardcore. It is
very gritty.
Think of all the racial tension that's going on in America right now, and then multiply it by including, creatures of different species as well. Because and this is the thing as well, all the existing racial tensions that exist in America right now. So there's the sort of racial tension between black people and white people and Hispanics and so on and so forth. That all exists in this world, but then there's also racial tensions between elves and humans and orcs and elves as well. So it's a horrible world to live in. And that's how they really go, like they really lean into that whole aspect of the film. And then you've got these little moments of levity where the orc character is kind of a little bit sweet and endearing at times, and he's kind of a little bit he's got a bit of a doe-eyed view of the world at certain points, and he kind of speaks his mind and says silly things sometimes.
And in the way that he's not completely familiar with human social interaction.
Yeah.
And it makes him come off as a little bit slow, but it's also kind of very, very sort of charming as well.
Yeah.
Which is contrasted quite differently from Will Smith, who for the first third of this film is just flat out an arsehole. And it's really weird to see. But, you know, that's how they build up that dynamic between it's a buddy cop and they're coming from opposite perspectives, and they have a very tense and fragile and discordant relationship, which you expect that by the end of the film they'll have found common ground, and of course they do.
Yeah, but it's just none of it rings true for me. I felt that this film tried to do a lot. It brought in a lot of different concepts and a lot of different motifs and themes and a very like a crazy variation in tone, and just couldn't resolve any of it in the one film. It felt like jam-packed with content and jam-packed with some really good ideas, but just fell over at every single point trying to do everything at the same time.
Yeah, I somewhat disagree with you there. And we discussed that, you said, like, if you strip away the fantasy element, what do you have left? You kind of have, like, a really mediocre buddy cop film. And that's End of Watch. Like, End of Watch is that film.
Yeah.
And I didn't like End of Watch, and I finished End of Watch. And I'm like, could they have done there to make that film interesting? And to me, it turns out it's filling it up with orcs and goblins and all your Dungeons and Dragons-y creatures that I grew up loving.
Yeah.
And creating a world which I think I really enjoyed the way they were built here, in that they sort of subtly referenced history, and they subtly referenced past events. And they didn't sort of go in your face, here's everything that's really cool, check it out. It's like, no, these characters live and they exist in this world. There's no real need to focus on every little aspect of it, but we can sort of show bits of it in the background and hint at it. And setting this sort of buddy cop against a reasonably well thought out world that they're not so in your face with, I very much appreciated.
I did too, and in a simpler film, this would actually be really effective, because you could really take time to give that buddy cop aesthetic time to actually form and to become something quite solid. But because we're switching around between so many different characters in this film, and everyone has
what do you mean so many different characters? There's two main characters and one main villain, and they barely leave the main characters so much. So
see, you've forgotten so much of what's happened in this film. So you've got the buddy cop, right? Then you've got the girl, the elf girl who steals the wand. Then you've got
she's with them and she barely speaks.
Yeah, but that's my point.
Then you have the rest of the cops that get killed. I somewhat understand what you're saying.
It's still
your
extra
biggest
clutter.
hang up with this film, though, is the main villains, which are the evil kung fu ninja elves.
Yes, they call them the Inferni. So the leader of them is played by Numi Rapace or Rapace. Let's go.
One of the two.
Yeah, one of the two. So they're introduced as kind of this ruthless, brutally efficient group who just murder everyone in their sight in their sort of quest to get the wand. And that's fine. You know, I have no problem with that. There's a scene where a SWAT team shows up at this bar that they're sort of going through, and they're just mowed down in about 5 seconds.
Well, I mean, not to mention there's a whole bunch of Latino gangsters there. It's probably about a dozen Latino gangsters who are armed to the teeth.
Yes.
And then a SWAT crew shows up, and these kung fu ninja elves just come through with like little knives and slit everyone's throats in a blink of an eye. Two entire squads are taken down without any effort at all.
There's only 3 of them, by the way, as well. So that's sort of giving you an idea of how ruthless they are. But then at the inevitable point where our buddy cop heroes face up against the 3 of them, they suddenly aren't able to kill them very efficiently and just employ the tried and true tested method of let's just fling them across the room, and that'll stop them for a while.
They suddenly become very inept, where before they're slitting people's throats, suddenly, like, you know, Will Smith can block a knife thrust, or they can't, you know, pick up a gun and shoot in time like they were doing before. It does become like they are bumbling fools essentially whenever the main characters are in shot. And even in that strip club scene where they've killed everyone, Will Smith and Joel Edgerton are sort of like watching them do it for a long time, and they're like, oh, they've killed everyone, we should probably run away, and then they just kind of run away and
Yeah.
they're not attacked or chased.
Yeah. They hang around.
It's
for
very
far
much
too long.
becomes a story thing, right? Where the only reason for it to happen is because you can't really kill off your main characters, and your main characters have to win a fight. But if you're going to do that, why set up these villains as being so uber powerful that no one could possibly stop them?
Yes. So I want to also talk about the whole point of this, the naming of the film. So the film's called Bright, and that references the fact that people that can handle a wand are very, very rare, and they are called Brights. So the Inferni, these ninja elves, are Brights. But aside from that, there's no one else that is a Bright, and apparently, human Brights are incredibly rare. So
so most of the Brights are elves, and all of the elves are wealthy and powerful. And there's human Brights are 1 in a million, and I don't think they ever mentioned that there's ever been an orcish Bright, but
there probably is. At the end, spoiler alert, it turns out that Will Smith is a Bright himself.
Who would have saw that coming?
Well, and it's just... But that's my point, isn't it? Like, it's just an unsatisfying conclusion. It's just like, well, okay.
I mean, but you knew that was going to happen.
No, I
from
did
the start
know, and
of the film.
that made it even worse. That's because there's a thing at the start where they're talking about some kind of prophecy. Like the buddy cops sort of turn up to the scene of a sort of raving lunatic who's swinging a sword around, and then they arrest him, and then he starts going on about a prophecy and how Will Smith's character is, a chosen one, or
special,
prophecy,
or chosen,
or something, or
whatever those words that they use.
But that's it. Like, there's that bit there at the start where they introduce this whole concept of there being prophecy, and then right at the end, Will Smith suddenly finds out that he's a Bright, and there's no journey for him whatsoever in terms of knowing about that or coming to that conclusion. It's just
the journey is not the discovery of the Bright. I think the journey is fundamentally at the core of the relationship between the two cops, and how they finally sort of do mend that. And I think they did that reasonably well. I think if we're comparing it to a film that we watched last week, Welcome to the Jumungle, there's a moment there where the two female characters are talking to one another. It's like, you can be quite stuck up and you can be quite judgy. All right, I'll try and stop doing that. And literally, like, their main character hang up is dealt with in 1-2 minute conversation.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, you're not going to spend a film actually developing these characters and showing through their actions how they come to respect one another. You're just going to do it in this crappy little dialogue scene.
Yeah.
I felt like, at least in Bright, it was slow and it was gradual, and it was over a series of events that these sort of two characters did actually sort of come together and start to respect one another.
I totally agree, and that is the point of the film. But because it's also tied to this concept of Bright, which is incredibly important in this film's world, it just feels like... I'm trying to think of a good example, but it's like, it's almost like if you take that Welcome to the Jumungle example, it's like those two female characters do that, and then you find out, like, immediately after that one of them actually created Jumanji. Like, it's too much to give to one character for no good reason. Like, their relationship didn't need that whole revelation that Will Smith is a Bright to actually conclude itself. So it just feels like they've added too much.
A better option would have been that the orc character was a Bright, or that no one was a Bright.
Yes.
And like the whole setup there was kind of a bit of a red herring. It's a bit disappointing that we went onto IMDb to sort of see what the other directors and people have been in, and Bright 2 is already confirmed.
Yeah.
And for me, that kind of makes me like the film slightly less.
Yeah.
That they're trying to, like, I like that this is self-contained. I like that they've put a lot of thought into this world, into this fantasy environment, and only sort of subtly referenced it. But the fact that they're sort of planning on going back and fleshing it out kind of makes me think, oh, maybe they weren't quite so, subtle with their references as I hoped.
Possibly not. But I think that what this proves, and I think that the whole reason why there is a Bright 2 is because there is an audience out there that loves genre mashups. It's something you don't really see too often, particularly an example as extreme as this. And that really gets the gears in my head a turn.
Yeah, the gears in motion.
If you know.
All right,
what
do
I
we
mean.
want to? Do you want to take it to the green room before we get too far?
Oh, I think we should definitely take it to the green room. And you know how we're going to get there? By the power of musical sting. And we're in the green room.
Is my voice any? No. It's no, it doesn't. Didn't help. Apparently, that's. I thought maybe it may have some medicinal purposes that, it takes some things away but gives some things back, but not at all.
I am just feeling like every time I go through it now, and now I'm getting that new sensation that as we're traveling through Sting, I'm getting slowly stretched. And I actually measured my height recently, and I've noticed that I've shot up a couple of centimeters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is odd. And by a couple of centimeters, I mean something like 10 to 15 centimeters. And
oh, wow,
yes, I could attribute it to a late growth spurt, but I feel like it's the musical Sting.
Is
doing
it
that.
supposed to be doing this? Should we get like an audio engineer in and see if there's like some sort of like bit rate or like compression that we've put on the Sting that's doing weird things? Like I'm sure it's not supposed to be happening like this.
No, I mean when I created the musical Sting, I specifically made it to specification so that it would just purely transport us. But something seems to have gotten into the mix.
That's probably some sort of MP3 compression thing, and it should have been a WAV file.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. In the big magical pot that I used to make it all, something slipped in. So anyway.
I really like the fact that we're focusing on the mashup, and I've had an idea.
Yes,
I reckon we do a 3, 2, 1 countdown.
Yeah,
and I'll do a story type or a story trope.
Yep,
and you do like a film genre environment. And on this count of 3, we both say the first thing that pops into our head.
A film.
And then
hang on, a film. Genre
like I don't
know
if you want to do like, because fantasy is what it does here. So this one is buddy cop meets fantasy. So buddy cop is there's the story type, and fantasy is the film genre.
Right.
So if you can pick like a setting, like an anachronistic or out there setting, and I'll pick like the type of story, then we'll see what mashed together we can come up with.
Yep. All right.
So, all right. Are you ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1.
Period English
mystery.
Drama.
Oh my god, that just works too well. We've just done Agatha Christie.
Yes, we have. That's not enough of a mashup, though, is it?
And it's not a mashup at all.
Okay. Well, we'll need to add something to this then.
I was thinking we just do a 3, 2, 1 again and see what the random generator spits out.
All right. Yep. All right. Go for it. I'm ready.
All right.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Prehistoric times. I
think that works. I think that works in ways in which we're not even entirely aware of yet, but we'll make it work. So the question is, with road trip, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can take that. There's like the Thelma and Louise style, somewhat serious road trip.
Mm-hmm.
There is the road trip, which is your American Pie style, coming of age sexual comedy. There's Speed, I suppose, could possibly be considered
like the action-y
kind of like road trip kind of thing.
The Johnny Depp style one.
Fear and Loathing is
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, yes.
That one. Private Idaho. I know I'm thinking of Keanu Reeves is in a film with River Phoenix on their own motorcycle. But you got Easy Rider. There is a road trip kind of film which is defines the youth's attitude towards a whole sort of decade. So there's a whole bunch of options there. And your suggestion was prehistoric, is that right?
Yes.
So do we do what Bright did and bring the prehistory into modern times, or do we do characters set in prehistory?
Look, I would like to bring prehistory into modern times. I would like to do an alternate history where the dinosaurs were never killed, where the dinosaurs were never wiped out by a meteor.
Interesting.
The meteor just
we're getting into Super Mario Brothers territory again.
Well, we're also getting into Pixar's The Good Dinosaur as well, because that's exactly what happened in that.
Right.
But I think also in the spirit of genre mashup, we mentioned a whole bunch of different films that sort of use the road trip aesthetic, but I think we should combine a few of them together.
Oh, absolutely. This is the thing here. We take everyone else's ideas and we pick out the best bits and we claim them as our own.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the prehistory thing. Are you thinking like caveman, or are you thinking dinosaur, or are you thinking Flintstones, which is caveman and dinosaur?
Well, it has to be caveman and dinosaur. Because if the dinosaurs were never wiped out, then the humans turned up and the dinosaurs are still there.
So I think I think I quite like the idea of, we set it in modern times, so circa 2018, 2020, and dinosaurs are kind of just like your cats and dogs and things like that.
Yep.
It becomes a little bit more awkward when you have T-Rexes and Brontosauruses and Brachiosaurs and all that sort of stuff, which are obviously, skyscraper height, and people still actually have to be somewhat wary of carnivores.
Yep.
But everyone's sort of trying to live their life somewhat ignoring the fact that they exist, but also the world is subtly different because they do exist.
If I could interject and throw a potential spanner in the works. So the thing that just came to my mind is in Jurassic Park, the first one, there's a banner that says "When dinosaurs ruled the Earth." So what if in this modern version of Earth, dinosaurs never stopped ruling the Earth and actually still rule the Earth, but in a completely modern context? So they are actually the leaders. They are actually in charge of everything to do with the world. Mainly because I just want to see dinosaurs in suits and going to business meetings.
With humans?
With humans, yes. But no human holds a position of power in this world. So the bosses, the entrepreneurs, the movie executives are all dinosaurs.
Are we going to do like a class and or gender thing and do those overtones like they did in
sure.
Bright? Obviously, heavily racial overtones. And this has overtones of sort of class struggle and gender struggle to actually find equal footing within the world.
Yes. So if it's let's say for the road trip, it is just a collection of humans who are looking for something better, looking for a way to the top. And that way we kind of give it that American Pie road trip style framing device. They're on a sort of quest for the top.
Exactly. But with any road trip, it is going from point A to point B.
Yes.
And so that's where I think we'd start with this story, is trying to figure out where is point A and where is point B.
Yes. All right. So point A, we have a group of plucky kids. Now, I really wanted to combine the kid aesthetic with something like Fear and Loathing, which is going to be a problem.
I'm just picturing now a velociraptor with a Hawaiian shirt and a backwoods baseball cap.
Yeah.
And he's the son of like a rich, powerful film studio executive.
Yep.
This is where we tie ourselves in.
Yep.
And these kids, dinosaurs and humans never normally get along.
Yeah.
But this group of kids with this one velociraptor have written this movie script. And because like the velociraptor in a Hawaiian shirt with a backwards baseball cap and possibly amber tinted glasses has an in, they all get invited to go down to Hollywood to pitch this film. And it's their journey from Seattle, sure. That's a place that's somewhat northwest in America.
Sure.
All the way down to the southwest coast of Hollywood.
Of Hollywood, yeah, for sure. Down our neck of the woods. That sounds fantastic. I love that idea. And I love the idea that this script is sort of has never before been seen in the world. No one's ever thought of like, oh, what if we did a film where it's like dinosaurs and humans? Everyone just thinks like, oh, that's crazy. Why would you do something like that? There's entertainment for dinosaurs and there's entertainment for humans, and the dinosaurs run both of them. But this is the first time that, and it's a bunch of kids as well, so they're very optimistic, enthusiastic, and ready to take on the world. So as part of every road trip film, there needs to be travails, there needs to be problems that they come up against, situations, and so on and so forth. What's going to happen on their journey?
I really like the idea of this where because we're stealing from so many different road trip genres, one of their escapades is like comedy, National Lampoon's Vacation style hijinks. The next one is like Thelma and Louise, We Shot a Guy. The next one is like Easy Rider or Fear and Loathing sort of drug trip thing. And we just keep bouncing back and forth between these three different sort of like, or four or five or ever how many. Next one is teen stoner comedy with inexplicable amount of topless teenagers. Who would have thought? And then back to the cops are on us and we got to jump off a cliff to outrun them. Sort of.
So I can see how this works. So what will happen is very early on the road trip, they hit a guy, right? So they hit some person. And
it's not a person. It's a dinosaur.
It's a dinosaur. Right. They hit a dinosaur.
And everyone knows when humans, have crimes against dinosaurs, they get punished much more severely than when dinosaurs do crimes against humans.
So they decide to take the dinosaur corpse and put it into the boot of their car and take it with them. And then there's a situation where they are stopped at like a tollway or a state border crossing, and they feel like they're going to get discovered with the dinosaur corpse in the boot. So then there has to be a kind of like Weekend at Bernie's style fun.
Weekend at Bernie's, you took the words right out of my mouth.
That's right, where they get the corpse of the dinosaur and try to make it look like it's alive, which somehow fools the border crossing agent.
Yeah. But in the next, scene, instead of being like a Weekend at Bernie style puppet, suddenly like there's blood and guts everywhere. It's more like Seven head in a box sort of style.
Yeah. Yep. And then to get the fear and loathing part of it into it, I think what should happen is they're traveling on the road, and then this packet of powder sort of comes out of the pocket of the dinosaur's corpse. And the kids, the kids are all handing it around, and they're like, "What is this?" And then the Velociraptor with the backwards baseball cap sort of hands it and takes it and says, "I'll show you what this is." And then there's a massive, like, basically acid trip sequence where
and then you can having drugs can cut between any of those styles. You've got the acid trip in Fear and Loathing. You've got it's a teen comedy with stoner drugs. That's going to be hilarious. And then it's like, you've killed one of our cartel members. We are the mafia, and we're coming after you.
Yes.
And then it sort of all ties back into like the dad being the movie studio executive, but he's using it as a front for drug smuggling. And like the guy that they've killed is actually linked to the studio. And we sort of, there's this weird sort of like, this is a thing, like, how do you shoot it? What's the color grade? What are the camera angles? Because they're also vastly different between we're going to have to hire like 6 different cinematographers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
3 different directors to actually make this work.
And a whole bunch of editors as well, because it needs to feel like a massive mashup of things. It needs to have everything and anything in there. Can I also throw another genre mashup in there? I think while they're on their acid trip, it should then turn into a body swap film. So the Velociraptor then thinks it's a human, and all the kids start thinking they're dinosaurs.
I like the body switch.
We'll get the body switch in there.
What I was actually thinking would be really good if we do it a little bit meta, and the characters know that they're in this.
They know they're in the film.
And they know that it's genre swapping. Ooh. So the moment they get attacked by the mafia with their guns, they're like, quickly, we have to get away until this becomes a teen comedy. Because in the teen comedy, we can't be killed by the mafia.
Yes. Could we also do it so that when the film switches styles, we actually switch out the cast as well? So for the sort of kids on a road trip kind of thing, we hire kids. For when it gets into the mafia style, against all odds, on the run style, we sort of cast adults and they're still wearing the kids' clothing. And then, so we just, every time the genre changes, we just change the cast to match.
Yeah, that's not bad. And that's how that they're somewhat aware as well, because they have their own memories from the scenes that they're in, and they have these vague memories from the scenes that they're not in. And they know that everyone looks slightly different, and they know that they don't actually sort of also recognize actors as well. It's like Samuel L. Jackson, your character was being played by Donald Glover just a moment ago, but how do I know the words Samuel L. Jackson and Donald Glover if we're in a universe where those actors don't exist? God. And it just becomes this existential crisis as these people sort of journey through both the world and their own sort of metaphysical experiences.
That's fantastic. So, okay, we've got the beginning, we've got the sort of middle. How is this going to end? Do we want them to be successful in their quest, or will this be a Thelma and Louise hurl off the edge of a cliff kind of...
We Andy Kaufman it.
Okay. Yep.
We Andy Kaufman it, and they all show up to the movie studio at the end, but there's like 4 different groups of people who all show up pitching their own movie. Great. But it's not the same film anymore. It's actually 4 separate films. And suddenly people, So we do this sort of, like Being John Malkovich kind of weird metaphysical crisis, existential crisis ending, where they kind of like all just kind of go, oh... And then the film is the script of the things that they just experienced, and they didn't even realize that they wrote themselves into existence 4 separate times in 4 separate ways with the same personalities and names.
And what we can then do is we can do the spin-off film after that, where one of the writers of this theoretical film starts having delusions and starts thinking that they're in a murder mystery about a flower.
Is that a Kaufman reference to a film that I haven't watched? Adaptation, is it?
Yes.
I have not seen that one.
Oh, well. People who are into it will know that, and they'll get that reference, and they'll snigger to themselves.
Good reference, AJ.
Thank you.
I picked the film that it was based on the fact that I don't have time for Andy Kaufman films. Don't make me think. Just make some things explode.
Yeah. We only need to take the essence of Andy Kaufman and all the other genres that we're mashing up. We don't actually need to do them any kind of justice whatsoever. They just need to feel like it. So in that regard, we don't really need to do any research. Just the stuff that we know off the top of our heads about all these different genres and directors and filming styles, that's all we need. We can rush this straight into production, and I predict that it'll be out in 4 days.
That's a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah.
The fact that we're going to have an A unit, a B unit, a C unit, a D unit, and an E unit
plus 4
independently
different
making their own films. Yeah. I kind of like the idea as well that we, with Mephisto, we have like a yellow button on the remote, and at any point during the movie you can hit the yellow button and it'll just swap to whatever one. Yeah. So it swaps between all the different films, and that always makes sense no matter where you swap, because the journeys are sort of all parallel and also somewhat interweaving. Yeah. And so as you press the yellow button, it just sort of bounces around between them, and you can sort of watch it in a million different ways depending on when you press the red button or the yellow button.
If I can throw an even more of a complication in there, and I think we can do this, possibly with magic, but anytime that you press that yellow button, the characters in the film need to be aware that that's happened. So at any point, at any point through the film, if the user decides to press that yellow button to switch the genre, to switch the story around, the characters need to know that that's happening, and they will reference it. I don't know how we're going to do that, but to me,
we can do it. We just have to film. We just have to film the film all the way through. And then also all the way through, but starting like 4 seconds in when someone may have pressed the yellow button. Yeah. And then we film the entire film again, but 8 seconds, starting from 8 seconds. And we only have to film the same film, 400 or 500 times, and then also 5 times because there's 5 different plot lines. So
that's it.
It'll be easy. It'll be easy to do.
But this is
and just in case you were wondering, yes, the whole thing does sync up to Dark Side of the Moon.
Yes. And the Wizard of Oz somehow as well.
Yeah, that's if you hold the yellow brick button
down. Brilliant. I think that's a wrap. Oh, hang on. No, it's not. We didn't
really cast that, did we?
No, we didn't come up with a name of that film either.
Beyond
we do
Samuel L. Jackson and Donald Glover. That's right. The name will do. Yeah, let's come up with a name. What's what are you thinking?
What am I thinking? I mean, how can this possibly? Could it just be like the asterisk symbol?
I've got it. Oh, I like your asterisk symbol. I was thinking tripping.
Oh, yes, it has to be that.
Tripping asterisk.
Yeah, tripping asterisk.
No. There's 4 asterisks. It's tripping asterisk, and that each of those somewhat represents each of the 4 stories. But then, I think we'll stick with 4. I did mention 5 before, but 4 sounds pretty good.
5's ambitious. 4, I think, considering we have to shoot 4 different films plus 500 different permutations for each film when the user might have hit the yellow button. Let's keep it at 4. 4 is a good number.
So it's tripping asterisk.
Great. It will be on the Visitor in 4 days. 4 days. Yeah. We do film a day. It's the perfect production time.
I mean, that's all it takes. I mean, the people who are subscribed to Mephisto will obviously have to buy the peripheral device. Yes. And on top of their existing subscription, they'll have to buy it's a measly $244, and it is worth it because you get at least 244 different watchings out of the same
Absolutely.
film.
I want to hear there'll be a fan one day that decides to watch every single second of footage that we've shot for that film as well. So they're pressing the yellow button like 500 times.
To be honest, I'm not sure they will, because those people are already trying to watch all the alternate endings to Tequila Gold, and it's taking them forever as well. So
as well as weren't there alternate endings for Cretaceon?
Yeah, Movie Film Studios Workshop's alternate endings is just churning them out faster than people can watch them, which is weird. It's a weird thing to be able to do, but they started retroactively going back to Adventure Children. And to the apart square bracket and Ment, and they're making. We didn't even ask them to do this. It's just a function that they've gone. We have the capabilities of doing it, and we're going to, whether you want us to or not.
I feel like that department might be becoming a bit self-aware Maybe they're behind the musical Sting escapades.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. And scary.
A little bit. I'm glad I'm in another country right now and they can't hear us. But anyway, that's a problem for next week to solve.
That is.
I do believe that's a wrap. That's an actual wrap now.
I believe so. All right. Any housekeeping? I do believe we have another review.
We do have another review. And it's a different kind of review this time because this person, who goes by the name of Archie S, capital S, lowercase n, capital C, so that's SNC, has written a review of one of our films, of Tequila Gold. And this individual has given that film 5 stars. So
5 stars. It deserves. It has. I mean, the film itself has over 160 stars in it itself. It deserves at least 5 stars in the ratings.
So this is quite a long review, so I'm not actually going to read it, but I'm just going to pick out some of the words of praise that they've written in there.
That's what I mean. All choice, quotes on movie posters and on the back of DVD cases really only just pick out the top 3 words in any review. It was brilliant, and there's ellipses between all of them, and you're like, did that person actually ever write the sentence "it was brilliant," or have you just picked words out from wherever you want to just spell out exactly what you wanted?
So I'll add in the ellipses when I feel like it's necessary. So here's one here: the experience ... positive ...
I did read through the rest of it. He does mention at the end of the film Leonardo DiCaprio being the king of Mars in that review. And again, that's an alternate ending I haven't seen, but it's good to see that a movie film workshop alternate endings is working hard. He did also complain that Mephisto did sort of like drop out and reset every 30 seconds, but complained as if it was a technical issue. What we've actually discovered is that our advertisers will pay us per playthrough of movie, and it doesn't actually have to play all the way through. So long as it gets at least 30 seconds in, we'll get the advertising revenue. And we've found that if it drops out and people start it 5 or 6 times, that's like far more financially beneficial for us than them watching it all the way through. So we've just kind of made the system do that a little bit. It does make it very difficult to get through films, but just be assured that it makes us much wealthier from our advertisers.
Brilliant. Yes. So it's working as intended. So it's not a bug, it's a feature.
It's not a bug, it's a feature is a fantastic saying. I haven't heard that one and I love it.
I mean, it's one of our mottos, to be honest. But yes, thank you very much, Archie SNC for that review, and keep them coming. Those iTunes reviews actually really, 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 really do help. Other housekeeping, moviefilmstudios.net is our website where you can find all of our previous episodes, our bios and some other bits and pieces. We are on Facebook, so join the community there. Have a look at some of the photos from our recent private screening of Jumangle. There's a couple of nice photos there that we had with the cast. Definitely the cast. We're on Twitter. We are at MovieFilmStudio because Twitter is spiteful. We are also on iTunes, as I mentioned. We're on pretty much any other place where you can get podcasts. So download it, rate it, listen to it. Yes, rate it before you listen to it. It's really, really helpful. Yes, get in touch with us if you want to. If you want to, if you feel like actually contributing a poster to one of our films, then yeah, we'd love that because we really don't want to pay designers to do it for us. Yep, that's where open source comes in. We've had Kieran, who you may mention, or may remember from the I was going to say Welcome to the Jingle All the Way. I think I'm just going to call every film Welcome to from the Jingle All the Way mid-seasonal special. Yes. Has done a few posters which we'll put up on Facebook if you want to contribute. Pick out your favorite movie film studio film and design a movie poster for. We'll post that up on our Facebook page indeed. As well. And as we've mentioned previously as well, if you write a review, we will probably read it out, provided it's not, or at least part thereof. Yeah, provided it's not as long as the one we just received. And I think that's it. All right, I think that's it for this week. It just remains to be said, thank you all for listening all the way through, right to the very end. I've been Isaac, and I've been AJ. Roll credits.